take a look at a classic game here of Karpov. This time versus Jussupow. Okay, this is in the Linares tournament of 1989. Karpov has the white pieces. I don't think we know what round this is. I don't think it matters. 1989. And let's jump right into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go with it. Alright, so Karpov opens up with c4. This could most likely turn into the English opening. Jussupow responds with f5, d4. So we have a proper Dutch defense here. Knight f6. Karpov goes with g3. This is the system that I play. I mean, I play g3 against everything, so. And Jussupow responds with g6. So this is pretty common opening theory. Bishop g2, bishop g7, knight c3, d6, normal development. Eventually, how are the arrows here again? Yeah, here we go. Black wants to plan for something like e5, strike in the center, look for some counterplay that way. This knight typically goes to d7 or c6. There are some lines where it goes to a6 as well. Yeah, Karpov is just going to go castles, or knight f3 castles. Bishop usually comes out by means of b3 and bishop b2 or bishop a3. So pretty normal stuff here, okay? Yeah, knight f3 castles, and Jussupow goes with c6, taking control of the crucial square here on d5. Saludos. Buenas tardes. Tienes más badge ahí que... Alright. Esto es contra Jussupow. Okay, c6. So, Karpov goes b3, queen c7, and bishop a3, what we were talking about. So bishop a3 prevents e5. Okay, so this is, we talked about this already. Typical plans in this position is black wants to go for e5 and strike in the center. Of course, they have to prepare a little bit more, because if you were to go e5 immediately now, this is not a good move, okay? If you go to e5 immediately, you just take. And black cannot take back because the rook is hanging. Okay. So yeah, bishop a3, just a bothersome move. I suspect that this is probably still theory. It looks very theoretical. Jussupow seems unfazed, and he goes with a5. Okay, so rook c1, bringing the rook towards the center of the board and kind of like, you know, bothering the queen over here. So yeah, we have that. Knight a6, and here we have our first comment of the game. This is typically for the Leningrad Dutch. The evaluation greatly depends on black's ability to carry out e7, e5 under favorable circumstances before white opens the center himself with e2, e4. So yeah, this is the plans that we talked about earlier. Both sides looking to strike at the opportune moment in the center. Okay, so Karpov already comes up with a pretty strong move, fairly simple. So here basically the plan is we want to go e4. It's kind of like a little bit of a prophylactic play on Karpov's Karpov's part. Kind of what he was known for, right? He really didn't allow anything to go on in his games. The normal thing would be to go rook e1 and try to prepare this and this as quickly as possible, but here our grandmaster friend, Marine, I don't know how you say that, points out that rook e1 you'd have to contest with knight b4. Okay? Attacking a2, and you would need to lose a tempo on defending a2. So Karpov kind of gets ahead of that idea, and he goes with queen d2. Okay, defending this pawn, but also connecting the rooks, which is kind of important for development, so there's that. Okay, he goes queen d2. Because the beauty of this move lies in its hidden logic. White would, of course, prepare the central break as soon as possible, but on the way he also respects the abstract principle of completing development. And here, Jussupow responds with bishop d7, which is marked down as a dubious move. This is Black's answer corresponds to the same logic, but quite surprisingly, it is a mistake. Unlike the white queen on d2, the bishop on d7 is not too useful. While on some lines it will stay in the queen's way and will even be hanging. These drawbacks of Jussupow's last move will be revealed later. It is essential to know the basic rules of development, but one should also have the strength to break them when necessary. This happens more frequently when playing with black, since the second player generally has to make small concessions in the battle of principles from the very start of the game. Now, he points out here there's another move that might have been a little bit more useful, and he kind of mentioned it on our last note. It's kind of just trying to be as annoying as possible, right? Trying to not allow white to carry out his plan without any difficulties. So the move pointed out here is knight b4. The key thing that it's doing here is just really neutralizing the bishop's pressure here on a3, kind of probably facilitating e5 for the near future. Now it says if white reacts with bishop b2, it makes sense, right? Because the bishop's not really doing anything on this diagonal anymore. Then he could go e5, so finally black gets his desired break in the center with e5. a3 booting that bothersome knight. Knight a6. Takes. And here, a very interesting move, right? Which is knight b5. Knight b5. Now, of course, the point of that is there's several things to this. First of all, of course, the queen is being threatened, right? And you think, well, I could just take. But if you take, white takes, and they're threatening the knight, and you're on the queen as well. So first thought, you might say, well, this is kind of like a cheapo, but there is a point to this, and the point to this is that this knight move here is freeing the bishop. So this is kind of like the main point. We're putting some really strong pressure here on black's center. But now we will see black has this move, queen e7. And you're not quite in time to take this pawn if you're white, because now you have a threatened knight, right? Now black is threatening to take, and they can move this knight because there's no more threat on the queen over here, right? Because the queen just moved. So I guess, well, this is not the move we wanted to do. I guess this is one of the, let me just delete this rook cd1 here really quick. Delete variation, yeah, no rook cd1. With the bishop on d7, like it happened in the game, if we were to fall into a line like this, this bishop would now be in the way of black having moves like queen e7. So I guess this is kind of why, I guess hindsight's always 20/20, right? But it's kind of difficult to suspect that bishop d7 is an error because of all this stuff going on here at the end, because you have queen e7. But I guess that's why Karpov was Karpov, right? So bishop e7, knight takes e5, pawn takes, and it says that this can be adequately met with knight c5. Right, this is what we pointed out earlier. And here we see why e7 is best square for the queen. White would probably have needed to play 12 d5 in this position. Okay, But this would have offered black some additional breathing space. Yeah, kind of. When you play d5, you're kind of relinquishing control of some important squares here in the center, mainly e5 and c5, of course. So yeah, interesting to see why bishop d7 might be considered a little bit of a dubious move. Bishop d7. So, what's the logical move here? We know, of course, that the plan is to continue with e4. Alright, strike in the center. We have queen d2 in, we're defending a2. There really isn't any weakness here on our side. So now we can continue with our plan. Rook fe1. e4 is coming. e4 is coming. Of course, Jussupow understands that at some point, knight b4 must be played, limiting the scope of this bishop on a3. And of course, the knight to begin with isn't doing really much of anything on a6. So he goes knight b4. Knight b4. This is like a kind of a theme similar to what we saw in the last game, where when Karpov played against Spassky. You know, Spassky had the black pieces. It was a Sicilian. But Spassky also went with some plan where he played a5 and knight b4, and that knight was just really annoying the whole game. And Karpov came up with some maneuver, I don't know if you all remembered, where there was a pawn on c2 and the knight was on c3, and he played knight b1 to reroute the knight over to d2 and f3, and at the same time play c3. Here we kind of see a similar idea. This is a completely different opening. It's a queen's pawn opening. It's a Dutch as opposed to a Sicilian. But kind of the same idea, right? There's an active knight here on knight b4. Now there's a piece that was doing a good job here, but it's kind of completed its mission here on this diagonal, so it's not really doing much of anything there. So the logical move would kind of be like in the same vein as in the last game. We're going to retreat a piece to a better square. Bishop b2, which is the move that Karpov plays. Brilliant move. And now we are preparing a3 to boot this knight. Beautiful, right? To see how just some ideas, even though it's a completely different opening, it's a completely different position, but the idea is the same. The idea is the same. We're looking to better our pieces, just doing some maneuvers so that they could find more active squares after they've already completed their mission on their original squares, and at the same time clearing the way for pawn moves to kick out active pieces. What deep play by Karpov. This guy was pretty good. They give us some options here. e4, right, which is the logical move, which is what we've been planning the whole game, because the whole plan's been around. e4 says that this offers black some counterplay in the way of f takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, rook takes e4, bishop f5, rook e2, and then what was black's plan again? Same as white. We want to strike in the center. e5 with counterplay. Okay, and now, as the machine points out, bishop d3 is coming, but also you're opening up the center, and you have a pair of very active rooks, more active than white rooks, I would say. Okay, so that could be, yeah, this is probably not something that you would want to allow with white, just to avoid the headache of this. The other option that they give white instead of bishop b2 is just playing d5, which is a pretty logical move in itself, right? It has its pros and its cons. It's claiming some space in the center, but you're giving up key central squares. An option given to black here is knight b6. And now the vulnerability of the f2 pawn could be a problem, right? Maybe the knight can make jumps to the machine points out here, but you have this square here as well. In addition with the queen here on f2, this could get annoying. This could get annoying, and also at some point, you gotta be careful with this file. Not there, but with this file, it might open up at some point in the future. And you're going to get a really active position. If this knight jumps to g4, at some point you might even have bishop h6. So this could get very uncomfortable very quick. Okay. So yeah, so instead of Karpov doesn't allow any of this nonsense. He's like, nope, I'm not dealing with it. And he goes bishop b2. Amazing move. Just absolutely amazing move. Where did my board go? Here. e5. Seems like a very logical move, right? It's what black has been playing for the entire game. But this isn't the best option. This is the best option. It says that Jussupow understood the following. Understood that following e2, e4, he would probably be losing the strategic battle, but this consistent continuation will fail painfully due to white's superior mobilization. Doesn't quite offer an alternative for Jussupow, though. Maybe rook a8 might have been a good idea, right? Just bringing more pieces to the center. I really don't see any other piece that could really be improved at this point. The knight's eventually going to get kicked out by a3. You're going to have to come back to a6. But rook a8 makes a lot of sense to me. You know that things are going to open up in the center, so you want to take all your pieces there and try to contest it as much as possible. And really right now this is like the only piece, right, that's not contributing much of anything. Well, neither is the bishop, but the bishop at the moment doesn't have any square where you could say, yep, or any obvious square, right? You say, yeah, it's a lot better there than what it is at d7. d7 probably for the time being is the best square for this bishop. But the rook definitely would be doing an amazing job on e8 or even d8 on the queen, right? So e5 just might have seemed a little bit premature. And Karpov here continues with his plan of playing a3 and kicking the knight. However, interestingly enough, Marin points out that after d takes e5, and a3, that this would have been a more restrictive move order, because it gives black less options. So black could have tried something like, for instance, e takes d4. After a3, black could try something like e takes d4 and kind of muddy the waters a little bit. Now, Jussupow didn't go for this. He played the automatic knight a6. So basically, yeah, just d takes e5 would have been a much more direct move order that really doesn't give black any options. It goes into this forced line. And if you know that this position is good for you, you don't really want to give your opponent any opportunities to deviate from the position that you already know works for you. So, but there's nothing really wrong with a3, to be completely honest. a3, knight a6, and now d takes e5, d takes e5. As you can see, we have the same exact position here. And here we see a recurring theme that we saw from earlier, which earlier it wasn't as strong because of the bishop not being on d7. But now the bishop is on d7, so the queen's movement is kind of restricted. And Karpov, of course, spots it, and he plays the brilliant knight b5. And the annotations say, it gets kind of excited here. Here comes Karpov's tactical explosion. I assume that Jussupow had taken this into account, but his wish to play e7, e5 was strong enough to convince him he would have adequate defenses. His main mistake of principle was not to grasp all the tactical subtleties when playing bishop d7 on the 11th move. After seeing this and seeing that white has some uncomfortable pressure here on e5, I'm even more convinced that instead of e5, rook a e8 would have been a very, very solid attempt, because you wouldn't have any of these problems on e5 right now. So here you have two main options. You could either take the knight, which is what Jussupow played, and we'll go into now in just a sec, or you could deviate, not with that, but you could deviate with queen d8. And in this case, a very strong move for Karpov. This gets a little bit tactical. I'll leave it here for just like a couple seconds, see if we can spot what the move is, because this is pretty brutal. What a guy this Karpov, right? I ask myself all the time, like, what would have happened in chess history if Kasparov hadn't showed up? Kasparov was just, I mean, even that first match, which they ended up postponing or canceling, I don't know what the heck happened with it, that they went into like 40-something games. Karpov was on the verge of winning that match. He was up like 4-2. This guy was just a beast. Well, the line given here is after queen d8, knight takes e5. Now, isn't that something? That's incredible. What's the point of this move, you might say? Well, the knight's just hanging on b5. Why can't I take it? C takes b5. And here, another pretty nasty move. This is just getting ugly really quick. Queen b6. When? Queen b6. It was white's turn. Oh, you said it's queen d8? Alright, so the problem with that is the line actually that we're seeing now. Knight b5. If you go queen b6, and this is just me analyzing here, but I suspect that it's the same idea. You get knight takes e5. And if c takes, you have knight takes d7, right? And you might think, well, I could just bring the rook over to one of these squares. But it doesn't work because your queen is hit on b6, so I could still take the queen. And basically you're just up a pawn for nothing. Here you could probably even get super greedy and take on f6 and then just take on b5. And then this guy here is going to drop as well. Of course, rook a8, you don't have to play rook a8. You could just go knight takes d7 instead of rook. And then take on g7. Takes here, take with check. You probably have to go rook f7 because if not, b7 is falling. And this is just, it's pretty much lost. You have an extra pawn. Positions is a lot better. So, yeah, that's the problem. With queen d8, you don't have to immediately move your knight from b5. Because this guy on d7 is hanging. Here's just another great example of why the bishop on d7 isn't great. You know? We were on this position here originally. Nasty move. Bishop d5 check. So what's the idea? It says it is a good idea to force the king into the corner, thus creating some future back rank problems. You might ask yourself, well, why can't I just take on d5, right? Well, pretty simple. If you go knight takes d5, queen comes with check, and guess what? This guy over here, we're going to highlight him red, because he's becoming a pretty big problem. He's about to drop. And the beautiful thing about this is that after king h8, you don't have to take that bishop immediately. You could take on b5 first, because now you're threatening two pieces, and you can't defend both of them at the same time. And if you were to try something like, well, you say, well, I could go knight b8, right? And I'm getting the knight out of the way, I'm defending the bishop, and you have no problems. Well, guess what? That traps your rook. That traps your rook. Rook has nowhere to go. You're going to have to play knight c6 again. And then this is just, it's becoming a disaster really, really quick. Knight a6 is not doing much help. That is correct. To be honest, I've never really seen this line that often. Like the knight, I usually see it in d7 or c6. This might have been theory of back in the day because this game was played in 1989. I'm not sure. Maybe it's still theory today. I'm not really an expert on the Dutch. Yeah, but the knight on a6 seems to be, and the bishop on d7. Both these pieces suck, for lack of a better word. So you have king h8, bishop takes b7, and this just keeps on getting really, really bad. This is already 2 pawns, so rook comes to a7. You take on a6, take on a6, and guess what? All of a sudden your bishop is pinned. The bishop can't move because you have, as the annotator stated earlier, back rank problems. You can still defend though, right? You have, you could go rook a7, which is what the line offers as some sort of resistance. But here's another fantastic move. I'm going to leave it here for just a second too. I don't think this one is too hard to spot. But after this next move, the position just falls apart. I mean, it's already fallen apart, but... Any clue? Any idea what the move might be? Yes! That is correct. Knight c6. Exclamation mark. Killer move. I mean, what are you going to do? The best thing that Grandmaster Marin suggests is just going for this. Bishop takes c6, queen takes, and this is just done. C takes b5, bishop takes b5. And it's a material imbalance, but even then, white has a material advantage, has a better position, has a boatload of pawns, and this is evaluated as better for white. Do you have to go bishop c6? I'm thinking you do. Because if you go like rook a8, I think you could just, well, not rook a8. What the heck am I suggesting here? I was thinking queen c7. What is rook a8? Oh my goodness, I've lost my mind. Let's delete this variation. Maybe like queen c7, right? You could always take on f6 and then take on a7. Like take here, takes, and you remove the defender, takes, and then this is even worse. Now you're just up a full exchange and a pawn as well, so this doesn't work. So yeah. Where was I? We already saw this line. What the heck is this line? Oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is that. This is the line where the rook got trapped. This is the line we just looked at. Okay, we were here, right? With bishop d5, king h8, bishop takes b7, rook a7, takes, rook ed1, rook a7, knight c6, bishop takes c6, queen takes, yep, rook takes. Alright, we already saw this line. So what's this queen b6? This is what we looked at before, right? Yeah, queen b6 is what we looked at before. Yes. This line, I don't know what it is. Oh, this is what we looked at before as well. Okay, yep. So that covers all the lines for that position. So queen d8. It just doesn't work. Queen d8 just doesn't work. You have to kind of, after knight b5, you have to bite the bullet and just go for it. C takes b5. It is what it is. What you gonna do? C takes b5. Double attack on the knight on a6 and on the queen on c7. This is a pretty common theme too in one of the Sicilians that I play, Sicilian Con, where black has a pawn on e6 and a knight on c6. White has a rook on c1 and a knight on c3, and they just go knight d5. If the pawn takes on d5, it doesn't matter. This pawn takes, and the knight ends up being pinned to the queen. This is kind of the same idea, really. Jussupow, of course, trying to put up the most resistance possible. I think Jussupow at one point in his career, he was a top 10 player in the world, if not top 5. Ridiculously strong. He had a kind of a style that was very similar to Karpov's, but just not quite as good as Karpov, you know? But one heck of a player as well. Like, his ideas were just... So he goes knight c5, and everything just starts coming in now. This is just... If it was me personally, I probably would have panicked here and be like, holy crap, I'm down a piece. I need to find something here quick, and I probably would have rushed like with b4 or something, and then step into some mess with knight e4, and I don't know. But Karpov is like, I don't care for none of this. I'm going bishop takes e5. There's a pawn hanging in the middle of the board. This is the second pawn that I'm picking up for a piece. I have initiative. Something's going to drop. So what can black do? I mean, your knight's practically hanging on c5. You're going to try to hold on to it, because if you lose a piece, you're just down 2 pawns for nothing now. So the only square really where you could stay defending that knight is b6. And now, as the machine points out, you're threatening things like knight b3. There might be some sort of a fork or something, so Karpov has to really come up with a solution. And what is that solution? The solution is amazing. Once he has him, he just doesn't let him go. Now, there are so many weaknesses here in black's camp. This knight being one of the main defenders of all the problem squares for black, right? You got d7 is a problem, d5 is a problem, c5 is a problem. This complex of dark squares here is a problem. Even the ones of white, it's a disaster. So Karpov incredibly spots, that knight f6 is one of the key defenders of this position. I'm going to remove it. For me personally, it would be very difficult to make a decision to trade a fianchetto to bishop in such an open position for a knight and just hand over the bishop pair. But there's very concrete reasoning behind all this. So bishop takes f6, kind of forced, right? Queen d5 check. So what happens now? You have a double attack here on the knight. If you go knight e6, I'm just going to take on d7 because the knight is no longer on f6 defending the bishop on d7. So it's like, what can you do here? Of course, you're really, really short of options. And yeah, Marin points out black's pieces are hanging, but Jussupow might have put his hopes in the next cunning move. Knight e6. Now, there's probably some trick behind this, which I see it now. Wow. I see it now. Let's discuss what happens first if bishop e6, because this gets a little bit hairy here. So bishop e6 could lead to a very messy position. or very messy sequence of moves. So queen takes c5. Right, queen takes c5, queen takes c5, rook takes c5, bishop takes b3, and here we go. All the pieces start jumping in now. Knight e5, so the knight's finally playing in this game. The bishop has been unleashed to attack white's black's weak point on b7. So b6, what a move, right? What a move, opening up the diagonal, but winning a tempo against the c5 rook. Bishop takes on a8, you really don't have a choice. If you move your rook, you're going to lose the knight here. So you have to take the rook on a8. B takes c5. Now you have to move your knight. Knight d7. Takes here. Knight d7 again, attacking c5, and of course getting out of harm's way. Rook c8. b6. And this is a problem. This is a problem for black. This pawn is very advanced, and the knight is covering the queening square. So this looks pretty much winning for white. Bishop d5 to avoid, or to stop the pawn from advancing further, but rook b1, bishop b7, and now look at this move. Rook c1. So who's defending that c5 pawn now? The answer is nobody. c4, and what a move. What a move here. I'll just leave it here. This is another tactical shot. Pretty simple. I don't think it's too easy to spot. Or, excuse me, I don't think it's too hard to spot. What's the move? What's the move? What's the move? Yes, you're 2 for 2, man. You're killing it. Holy crap. You're really spotting them today. Rook takes c4. What a move. You might think the rook is hanging, but no. Because knight e5 check. King e6, knight takes c4 check. And guess what? This is completely losing for black because a5 is about to drop. And if you play a4, I'm going to go knight a5 anyway, followed by b7. And you are dead. Okay? So that's what would have happened after bishop e6. It probably was a good attempt, to be honest, but the fourth sequence here really leads black to a dead loss position. So knight e6, and this move is really tricky. Why is it so tricky? Well, because the problem is if I go queen takes d7, which is what I thought initially, black just goes rook a d8 and says, guess what? Surprise, your queen is trapped. Incredibly enough, this is exactly how the game went. Karpov went for queen takes d7, Jussupow played rook a d8, and now Karpov has a killer move, which this one's a little bit harder to spot. And this is just Karpov being a beast, not only at spotting tactical opportunities, but evaluating positions. But Karpov is kind of known for, I guess, positional play and his maneuvering and really understanding positions and whatnot. And I think one of the most overlooked elements about his game is he was a tactical beast, man. He really saw everything and anything. And this move, just going into the sequence, when you play this move back on, when you play knight b5 back on move 16, you have to be seeing all of these lines that we saw up until move 21. You have to see that in this, because if not, your queen is just trapped. You have to see this to be able to get into this line. And just the fact that he was able to just maneuver his way through all these complications and all these variations. You understanding Kasparov game? Well, it's not Kasparov, it's Karpov. And I do have the help of a grandmaster. This is an annotated game, so. Yeah, so these aren't all my commentaries, so no need to panic here. Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna go on with the move, because this one might take a little bit longer to spot. Queen takes knight. No, it's not queen takes knight. What's the idea? Queen takes knight? After queen takes queen? No, it's brutal. The move is absolutely brutal. Here Karpov goes 4. Do you want a few more minutes, or do I want to continue on with the moves? All right, let's move forward, because this is just nasty, absolutely nasty. Karpov goes and he plays that. I wish I could have seen Jussupow's reaction, although he probably saw it. He probably saw it, because he wouldn't have gotten to this point and think, "Huh, I just trapped Karpov's queen, I win." He probably knew something was up, and or upon further inspection, he probably spotted this move. Rook c6. Holy crap! Holy crap! There's just no other word for it. Holy crap. What's the idea? Well, the idea is, first off, I'm attacking your queen. So very simply put, if you take on d7, I take on b6. And the only thing that happened here is I have 2 extra pawns, okay? So you think, well, that rook is just hanging. This is stupid. Why can't I take? Well, what happens? After you take, all of a sudden now, the queen is not defending the knight, because his pawn is in the way. And you go queen takes e6, check, king h8. Guess what? You have knight e5. So now, if you want to regain one of your pawns as black with queen takes b5, I have knight f7 check. And guess what? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against 5. It's just it's a winning position. So there's that. And if you go rook d e8 to kind of avoid the fork, well, then I have queen takes c6. Okay? Queen takes c6, and if queen takes c6, I simply have knight takes c6. And I have 3 pawns. 3 pawns for the exchange. This one's about to drop. This pawn on a5 is about to drop. So it's about to be 4 pawns. I have, even though I'm down in exchange, I have a better position. I have passed pawns. Yeah, rook c6. What an amazing move. And so this is absolutely and completely winning for white. You really just... The bishop on g2 has only moved once, and now just the pressure that it's exerting on the queen side, along with the knight, which is taking over the queening square on b8, along with the advantage in pawns that you have. This is just... The exchange doesn't matter here. This is just absolutely winning. So that's what happens if you take the rook with the pawn. There are options, though. You could try to muddy the waters here with queen takes c6. And you might think, Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Well, queen takes, pawn takes, but then I could always take on d7. But you have this sequence over here. Knight c5. Rook d1 defending the pawn on d7. And if knight takes b3, well, guess what? This is just too much. I mean, it feels like black really can't do anything. If knight takes e5, knight e5. So you're threatening on b7, and you think, well, what the heck? This knight's just hanging. But I have bishop d5 check, taking on b3. And not only that, I have d8 queens, which I didn't even see, so that's kind of like the point of this move. Knight e5, you really can't take the knight because it takes the bishop off of the queenie square. So yeah, you don't even have to go bishop d5. You just queen right away. So knight e5, rook d8, kind of threatening to take now. And just bishop takes b7. He just does not care. Bishop takes e5, bishop d3, bishop d5 check, king h8, bishop takes b3. And if the rooks weren't on the board, it would be kind of drawish. Even though white has 2 extra pawns, it'd be difficult. It'd probably be difficult, but there are lots of opportunities to draw. But with the rooks on the board, bishop a4 is coming. The rook has to stay on d8 or guarding the 8th rank along with the king, while the other rook on d1 could just roam freely. The fact that the rooks are on the board just makes this hopelessly lost. Hopelessly lost for black. In this position, Jussupow didn't opt for any of those 2 options because they quite clearly lead to very forced, lost endgame. So he goes to rook takes d7. It says this looks like the lesser evil, but abstractly, it is equivalent to resignation. So this is move 22, and Jussupow basically already got wiped off the board. You know, there's so many tactical sequences going on here. Karpov didn't miss a beat, you know. Rook takes b6. Now you're up like 72,000 pawns. Your knight on e6 is being attacked. You know, your knight on f3 is going to move, and you're going to be putting some more pressure here on this guy on b7. This is bad. This is really bad. So knight has to come to c5. That move makes a lot of sense, actually. You know, attacking on b3, defending on b7. But of course, Karpov, he doesn't let you do anything. He just goes b4, kicking that knight out. A takes, and really the knight doesn't have a lot of good squares. Knight e4, and e3. Yeah, this is just... Karpov won 2 pawns, and despite the technical difficulties, managed to bring home the full point. Because even here, you have 2 pawns. One of them is doubled, though, on the queen side. So you still have to unravel a little bit, okay? But he did this fairly simply. Jussupow correctly spots the king. This is an endgame. We need to bring the king into the game now. So he goes king f7, trying to bring all the forces in to cooperate. h4. Rook b8, you know, covering the weakest point currently in your camp. Rook c1, bringing the final piece into play and into the open file. Yeah, this, not only is there a material advantage, but just white has so much more activity. King e7, knight d4. What a move. What a move. What I'm thinking is, why doesn't black want to take on d4 here? There's no annotations here. What happens if bishop takes d4? Would something like this be possible? So I was thinking rook c7, but you always have rook d7, right? So why isn't bishop takes d4 possible? Oh, h5? Oh, wow. h5, and if it takes, probably rook h6. Oh, so okay, yeah, the bishop is just doing a fantastic blog. Maybe he is doing a blog. He's doing a fantastic job in blocking the third rank here from the rook. But if I could get h5 in, just undermining the pawn chain here completely. And of course, if you take on h5, well, that's not what I want to do. If you take on h5, then this rook comes to h6. Woof. Knight d4, and of course there's a monstrous threat of knight c6 check, taking the rook on b8, because if bishop if pawn on b7 takes on c6, and just rook takes b8, right? This is a very legitimate threat. This, and of course you can't take because the rook takes on b8. Jesus. So he gets out of that threat. Bishop takes e4. That was probably black's best piece, the knight on e4 being very annoying. And now knight e6 coming to c5, just attacking everything. Wow. Bishop d8, you think, oh crap, my knight or my rook is trapped. But I have knight g5. Bishop takes, h takes, rook e8. Probably at some point king g2 is coming. You're going to try to activate that rook through the h file if nothing opens up along the c file. So rook e8, rook c4 attacking e4. So black was probably intending with this last move of rook e8 to exchange the rooks on e6, right? Go here and then go, what the heck happened? To go here, because I'm clicking the wrong button, that's fine. Holy smokes, I'm having technical difficulties here. Not rook e5, what the heck is rook e5? Where's the button that I'm trying to click? This one, this one. Rook e8. With rook e8, he wants to go rook e6, finally, Jesus. He wants to go rook e6 and just probably exchange a pair of rooks off and kind of alleviate the pressure a little bit. And Karpov is like, nope, I'm going to attack your pawn. So if you exchange with rook e6, I'm just going to take it and take your pawn. So now you have to come up with something else. King g7, you're kind of running out of moves. And finally here comes king g2. Probably even a plan like g4 and king g3 might be something to king g3 and king f4, right? Something like this. And this, and that might be something very, very possible as well. I don't think that that's what, yeah, there we go, rook f7. He's kind of stopping that plan. Rook d6. h6, you're really running out of moves here. It's amazing how tied up black is in a b6, claiming some more space. Maybe rook c7 is coming. Rook e5, because like, what the heck? Rook c7. Rook f8. I'll take another pawn. Thank you very much. Rook ef5, trying to put some pressure on f2, but I could just go rook d2, rook b5, and rook d4. And Jussupow here said, I've had enough. Please take this guy off of me. He's just kicking my butt. That was pretty, to beat a guy like Jussupow like this, like back in the 80s when he was still like at the peak of his game, says a lot about Karpov. He was just too good, and just all the variations that he was able to navigate through, and all the complications, and he just basically he saw absolutely everything. He saw everything that there was to see in this game. And he did a better job of evaluating all the intricacies better than Jussupow. So that was just, yeah, like we were saying, Karpov is really known for his positional play and his understanding and how he maneuvers the pieces, and he really didn't let his opponents do anything. But this is just a great example of his tactical vision and prowess, right? Yeah, Karpov was just too good. I wholeheartedly agree. Wholeheartedly agree. And I think, in all honesty, like some of those matches with Kasparov, he just had bad luck. But yeah, he was just too good. All right, we have our classic game in for the day.